Picture this, a circus performer, completely dialed in, balancing a spinning plate on the very tip of a tall, ridiculously thin stick. They're constantly shifting their weight, eyes locked on that plate, making these microscopic, split-second adjustments just to keep the whole thing from crashing down. But here's the really wild part. There is exactly one singular, microscopic sweet spot on that plate where it balances perfectly. Literally just one. If that stick is placed anywhere else, gravity instantly takes over, the plate tilts, and boom, it's shattered on the floor. So the big question is, mathematically, how do we actually find that spot? How do we calculate that exact point of perfect balance without relying on guesswork? Well, by the end of this explainer, you are going to deeply understand the center of mass. We'll break down the calculus formulas behind it and show you how engineers use this exact same math to balance massive, real-world structures. We're going to build this up step by step, so let's just dive right in. Section 1, the perfect balancing point. Before we tackle the complex calculus, let's look at something you've probably played with as a kid. Think of a playground seesaw, right? If you've got a heavier kid on one end and a much lighter kid on the other, you know exactly what happens. The heavy side drops. But if that heavier kid scoots inward, closer to the middle, suddenly the seesaw levels out. They balance perfectly. You're basically changing the distribution of the mass to find that balance. But what if those kids are glued to their seats? What if the masses simply cannot move? Well, if the mass can't move, we have to move the pivot point, the fulcrum, instead. And that brings us right to our core definition. The center of mass is the exact mathematical point where a fulcrum should be placed to make a system perfectly balance. Just imagine a one-dimensional number line. You've got a 10-kilogram weight sitting at one spot and a 5-kilogram weight at another. Where exactly do you put your finger right underneath that line so it doesn't tip over? Figuring out exactly where to put your finger takes 3 really simple steps for objects on a 1D line. Step 1, calculate the total mass of the system. You literally just add the weights together. Easy. Step 2, find what physicists call the moment. You take each mass, multiply it by its coordinate distance from the origin, and then add those up. Basically, the moment measures the mass's tendency to rotate the whole system. And finally, step 3, just divide that total moment by the total mass. The results you get, that is the exact coordinate of your balancing point. Moving on to section 2, balancing in 2 dimensions. Okay, so we're leveling up. We aren't just on a straight number line anymore. We're now operating on a flat surface, an XY plane. Now wait, pay close attention here because this is where a ton of students trip up on exams. When we calculate the moment with respect to the y-axis, which means the tendency to rotate around that vertical axis, we actually use the x-coordinate. I know, it sounds totally backwards. But why? Because the x-coordinate represents the physical horizontal distance back to the y-axis. So conversely, the moment for the x-axis is calculated using the y-coordinate distance. Keep that in your back pocket. Let's see this in action. Take a look at this data for a discrete 2D system. We've got 3 floating point masses here. A 2-kilogram mass at -1,3, a 6-kilogram mass at 1,1, and a 4-kilogram mass at 2, -2. To find the center of mass, we just run our trusty 3-step process twice. First, add up all the mass to get 12 kilograms total. Then, find the y moment by multiplying each mass by its x-coordinate, and the x moment by multiplying each mass by its y-coordinate. Finally, just divide both of those moments by your 12-kilogram total mass, and boom, you get your exact x and y balancing coordinates. It's just simple algebra. But here's the big question. What happens if our shape isn't just a few floating dots perfectly lined up on a grid? What if we're looking at a continuous, solid, thin plate? Kind of like that spinning plate from the circus we talked about earlier. We can't exactly just add up a few dots anymore, because a solid plate has an infinite number of mass points. So in formal textbook terminology, a thin, continuous 2D sheet of constant density is called a lamina. And its geometric center of mass, that's called the centroid. Now, because the density is perfectly uniform across the whole sheet, finding this balancing point becomes purely a geometry problem. We just need to find the centroid of the shape delineated by the edges of the plate. Which leads us to section 3, center of mass using calculus. To deal with the continuous area under a curve, basic algebra just isn't going to cut it anymore. We need integral calculus to add up an infinite number of incredibly thin, rectangular slices of our lamina. But don't let the symbols intimidate you. Notice how this calculus perfectly mirrors our earlier 3-step discrete process. Look at the formulas. Step 1, total mass is literally just the integral of the density multiplied by our function f of x. Step 2, the y moment is the integral of density times the horizontal distance x times the height f of x.
And step 3, the x moment takes the integral of density, multiplied by the height f of x, but then multiplied by half the height, so 1/2 f of x. Why? Because the center of our tiny calculus rectangle is exactly halfway up. Multiply that all out, and you get 1/2 times f of x squared.
Let's ground this with an example so it makes total sense. Say we have a plate shaped perfectly like the area under the curve f of x equals the square root of x, stretching from x equals 0 to x equals 4. All we do is plug that function right into our integrals. We find the mass, we calculate the x and y moments, we divide them out, and there it is. The exact centroid is located at the coordinate 2.4, 0.75. If you put a pin exactly on that spot, that weird curvy plate is going to balance perfectly. Now, you might be wondering, and this is a fantastic student question that comes up all the time. You'll notice that the Greek letter rho, which represents the density constant, is sitting inside every single one of those integrals. So why doesn't a really heavy, solid steel plate have a different centroid than a light, flimsy plastic plate of the exact same shape? Well, the reason is that when you do that final step, dividing your moment by your total mass, the constant density on the top of the fraction perfectly cancels out the density on the bottom. The balancing point is determined entirely by the geometry of the shape itself. Pretty cool, right? Next up, section 4, area between two curves. Let's level up one more time. What if our lamina isn't just sitting nice and flat on the x-axis? What if it's floating freely between two completely different wavy functions? The adjustment to our formula here is beautifully intuitive. When the shape rests on the x-axis, the height of our infinite little calculus rectangles is just the top function, f of x. But if the shape is wedged between a top curve, f of x, and a bottom curve, g of x, the height of the shape at any given point is simply the top minus the bottom. So, f of x minus g of x. You literally just swap that new height into your integral formulas and the math totally works itself out. Moving right along to section 5, the symmetry shortcut.
All right, now that we understand the heavy lifting of integrals, let's talk about a major hack. If you're sitting in a calculus exam, this is an absolute lifesaver. It's called the symmetry principle. And it states that if a region is perfectly symmetric about a line, then its centroid must lie exactly on that line. Think of a perfect circle. You instinctively know the balancing point is dead center, right? You definitely don't need intense calculus to figure that out.
Let me show you how brilliantly this saves us time. Say your plate is shaped like the function f of x equals 4 minus x squared. Just doing a quick visual check tells you this is a downward-facing parabola perfectly mirrored right across the y-axis. Because the left side is totally identical to the right side, it's absolutely going to balance right in the middle horizontally. That means the x-coordinate of the centroid is automatically 0. Just like that, you completely bypass half of the brutal integral calculus and only have to solve for the y-coordinate. Huge time saver.
Finally, section 6, the Grand Canyon Skywalk application.
Let's connect all of this directly to the real world. This math isn't just for passing tests. It literally keeps people alive. Hovering 4,000 feet above the Colorado River is the massive Grand Canyon Skywalk. It's got a glass floor, and it's what we call a cantilever structure, meaning it extends straight out over the edge of the canyon with literally 0 visible posts underneath holding it up. Yet, despite essentially floating in midair, it safely supports over 70 million pounds. So, how do engineers actually guarantee this massive structure won't just tip forward into the canyon? They find the exact center of mass. They model the entire U-shaped platform as a continuous lamina, but instead of trying to compute one totally impossible integral, they break it down into 3 much easier subregions: the semicircular curve hanging over the canyon, the straight legs resting on the edge, and the massive anchors buried deep in the bedrock. They find the centroid of each simple chunk, treat each of those chunks as a single-point mass on a grid, and then, get this, they just use the exact same simple discrete algebra from the very beginning of this lecture. This ensures the final combined center of mass is safely buried deep within solid ground, perfectly counterbalancing all that weight hanging over the edge. So, let's bring it all together. Whether you're looking at 2 kids on a seesaw, a thin plate defined by algebraic curves, or a multi-million-pound steel observation deck, finding that magical balancing point always comes down to calculating total mass, finding the moments, and dividing. You now officially know the mathematics required to balance a 70 million pound structure floating over a massive canyon. But here is a provocative thought to leave you with. Calculating the static, unmoving center of mass is one thing, but how in the world do we calculate the dynamic pressure when 100-mile-per-hour canyon winds suddenly slam into that exact same structure? Well, we are going to